Been with us, Sudan's armies received and is considering a new proposal from the United States and Saudi Arabia for a truce with its rival paramilitary. The civil war's been raging since April the 15th, 2023. Two generals who were once allies are at loggerheads, and the people of Sudan are in a living nightmare. Up to 150,000 dead. That is one estimate. Some say it's much higher. 12 million people internally displaced. 4 million people have fled abroad. Well, we'll have the view of a man who some see as a possible unity candidate to bring the country together if peace can be achieved. He's Abdallah Hamdok. First, this report by Monty Francis.
These women are grieving and offering prayers for an entire family of 10 killed in a drone strike in central Sudan. The family's home was leveled in the explosion, which left many others in the village injured.
The strike took place just after our nighttime prayers. After the drone hit, they got us out and took us to the hospital. Some of us were injured and others were dead.
Drone strikes have intensified in and around the city of El Obeid, a city in the central Kordofan region under the control of the Sudanese army and targeted by the paramilitary group the Rapid Support Forces, which tightened its grip on the western Darfur region back in October. Now the RSF has its sights on Kordofan and in recent months has bombarded the region with drone strikes to deadly effect.
The drone hit, the yard was full of women and children. Around 58 people died on the spot, and the rest were taken to the hospital. The following morning, we were told 7 more people had died from their injuries.
The current conflict began in April of 2023 between the RSF, led by General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, and Sudan's armed forces, led by General Abdel al-Burhan. The violence has led to what's been described as the world's largest displacement crisis, with more than 12 million people forced from their homes. The UN has referred to the current situation in Sudan as the world's worst humanitarian crisis for women and girls, who make up more than half of those displaced and who are being deliberately targeted with sexual violence.
Monty Francis there. Let's bring in our special guest, Abdallah Hamdok. Abdallah Hamdok is chairperson of SUMUD, which is the Civil Democratic Alliance for Revolutionary Forces. Mr. Hamdok was overthrown in 2019 after coming to power in the wake of the end of the dictatorship of Omar al-Bashir. Mr. Hamdok then is Sudan's former civilian prime minister and here to give us his sense of what is happening in his country right now. When you see, sir, thank you for being with us most of all, when you see that report, you see those images, you know what's going on in your country. It clearly, give us your sense of where we are right now and how painful things are presently.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to the world. We do appreciate French 24. You are one of the most important channels that have been always reporting on Sudan. I must mention upfront your similar report on the use of chemical weapons in Sudan, which have a very serious, devastating effect on our people. Let me go to the current crisis. Today, the humanitarian crisis in Sudan is the largest in the world, larger than Gaza and Ukraine combined. You know the statistics. More than 15 million internally displaced people, more than 4 million refugees, very unfortunate loss of life, over 200,000 lost their life, not to mention the destruction in property, private and public, infrastructure. It's almost a collapse of the state, not to mention the economy and all that. So it's really a catastrophic situation.
Do you feel, sir, that this latest plan, US, Saudi Arabia, formulating this scheme, this idea to try to bring peace, do you feel it can get any traction, it can make any progress?
Absolutely, yes.
You do?
Yes, I do. I see light at the end of the tunnel. The squad, which is actually put forward by 4 countries, the US, Saudi Arabia, UAE and Egypt. It did not come from nowhere. It builds on previous effort.
I understand that it's tied, or rather aid that would follow from Saudi Arabia is tied to the government that takes over being basically the state forces, as we have now, the forces of al-Burhan. Doesn't that automatically alienate the other side, the rapid support forces, and therefore perhaps...
Any idea of picking and choosing one side in this equation, it is a recipe for prolonging the war. Yeah. We would like to see all this genuine effort in the mediation to help us get an end and stop this war.
Because this current war began on April the 15th, 2023, but anybody who has even a passing interest in world affairs knows that conflict in Sudan goes back many generations. One can think of what happened in Darfur many generations ago. One can think even before that.
Absolutely.
The instability, the scale of conflict there is profound. How do you begin to heal those wounds? It's incredibly difficult.
You know, you are absolutely right. This war in 2023, it came in a series of conflicts and war. Our first war started 1 year before our independence, 1955, and continued in the south, Darfur, South Kordofan, Blue Nile, the east. Previous wars were in the periphery. This current war started in the center and quickly engulfed the entire country. So it is in its impact and devastation and all that, it came as a culmination of all these wars before. That's why it's extremely devastating. Having said this, there are root causes of this. Of course, they didn't just fall from the sky on us. The issues of marginalization, failure of managing diversity, identity politics, and name it, religion and state, impunity, all this.
Your position, perhaps, could be that of the unifying force, some might say, someone who has a background of being the only ever civilian Prime Minister of Sudan. Certainly sort of taking that mantle suggests you could be a unifying personality. There's also this judgment against you from the courts in Port Sudan, which is the de facto capital at the moment, which links you to terrorism and links you to the rapid support forces. How would you respond to anybody who would say that that might prevent you from being that kind of unifying factor that you could be?
Let me put the record straight here.
Please do.
My major concern today is not about going back to office or anything. What gives me sleepless nights is this crisis and the suffering of the Sudanese people. And that's what makes me tick. The court cases against me and a number of our colleagues in Sumud, these are, I think, trivial efforts, escaping from addressing the real requirements and conditions of stopping this war. It's baseless. It's nothing.
Those requirements would be?
Those requirements would be to be serious about stopping this war and come to the negotiating table. In Sumud, we put forward a vision to stop this war. It has 3 tracks: ceasefire track, humanitarian track, and a political track.
Because the need, you mentioned the humanitarian angle there, the need for humanitarian help across the whole of Sudan right now is enormous, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Can you give us a sense of the scale of things that are going on? I mean, clearly we can talk about the numbers, which are overwhelming, but in terms of, you know, how do people manage? It's one of the things that goes through my mind.
It's mind-boggling. It's really, it's
really
very
is.
distressing. It's sad. People are stretched. There is nothing there. The UN says there are 25 million people are subjected to famine and starvation. You know, in war, you cannot cultivate, you cannot...
Everything stops.
Yes, and the sad thing also, food is being used as weapon of war, which is crime against humanity. It's a war crime. Also, the resources that is available is very meager. It doesn't actually cover more than 10-20% of what is required. So the sufferings are really, we could not find words to describe it.
What would you say to the international community? Because as you mentioned, you're here on our channel, you perhaps have, the world watching. What would your message be to the international community about what needs to be done right now? I mean, clearly the ceasefire has to happen straight away. The negotiations have to happen. But clearly aid has to get into Sudan, and
Yes.
aid needs to get there quickly.
Yes. Human life and addressing needs, humanitarian need, is number one priority. In the middle of the conflict in Gaza, aid was trickling through. In Syria before, during al-Assad, aid was coming from Turkey. In our own case, Sudan Lifeline, in the 80s, we didn't reach ceasefire, but humanitarian support and assistance was coming through. So I think this is number one priority, saving people's lives. Ceasefire will make it better. Then political process to address this whole crisis, because this is the only assured way of sustained peace.
How do you then, if peace or some kind of ceasefire can be achieved, how do you then put those warring factions together again? The two generals that overthrew you in 2021 are now fighting each other. How do you stop that happening? Because clearly they have reasons to do that.
Ceasefire normally, I think, reach between two fighting parties.
Do you think they can just bury the hatchet?
No. That's why you need to go through a political process. There are issues also related to community issues of hatred speech, and this war actually divided us vertically, ethnically, regionally, and all that. This will take long period to heal, but it will eventually, provided that we ended this war through a right formula, which will address the root causes of this conflict.
Mr. Hamdok, sir,
marginalization.
you have to believe that, because you can't not believe that, can you? Because it's the future of your country you're talking about.
It is. Yeah. No, absolutely. This is what I'm saying. The only way to stop this is to go through. Look, there is no military solution to this. And I think this is one of the excellent proposals put forward by the Quad. Number 2 element in the 12th point of the Quad talks about, and which we've been saying in Sumud for a long period of time. None of the two factions will have outright victory on the other. So if that is the case, why prolong the suffering of our people?
Indeed, if the two factions can't win, why prolong the suffering of the people? In fact, it's got to be the victory of the people of Sudan that counts, hasn't it?
Yes.
How do you start re-establishing that? How do you start re-establishing Sudan as a viable state?
We put forward this idea of a roundtable conference, Sudanese dialogue, and we have outlined an elaborate process which would start with a preparatory committee formed from the major blocks. In Sumud, we believe we represent probably the majority of the civilian component, but we do recognize there are other blocks, TASIS, the Democratic Bloc, and even some of the political parties and other components outside these three blocks. We believe, with the exception of the political Islam, the National Congress Party and the Islamic movement, other than that, everybody else, we as Sudanese, we hope we can get together. And this is not strange to our history. We've done this at least 3-4 times. Our independence happened because of this consensus, and we got together. We did it in 64, toppling dictatorship in 85, and this last regime of al-Bashir. So we are used to building coalitions and all that, but we want this one because this is the most serious crisis the country faced. It is existential threat to be able to put together this process. Working together, we are extending our hand to all the other political groupings and all that. And this round-table conference can be able to address issues of transitional arrangement, transitional constitution, and that approved by all these groups together can provide the way for the country to move forward and end once and for all this military regime.
Let's hope that happens for the good of the people of Sudan, and I sense from what you're saying that is completely what your heart is full of. Abdallah Hamdok, thank you for coming to our studios to speak to us. We appreciate your presence. I remind everybody, Abdallah is chairperson of SUMUD, the Civil Democratic Alliance for Revolutionary Forces in Sudan. Abdallah Hamdok, I remind you again, first and the nearest Sudan has had to a proper civilian prime minister in its time of independence. Thank you once again, sir. And I hope for a peaceful outcome for all the people of Sudan, whichever side they support, and they go forward and prosper. Thank you, sir, once again for being with us here on France 24.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.